I'd like to ask like the panel then to, starting from the right, starting from you, Shams, what should be done? What would you recommend?
I definitely think that people should be encouraged to have a journey, a self journey, and finding out what it is that you like and love, and what type of things that you are, you consider yourself to, you would be happy in 10 years to be done. I know that when people started doing plastic surgery and stuff, they were, they had to go through a lot of options. I know when people go for abortions and stuff, they have to go through some sort of options. I do just think that people should kind of have a reminder about what the possibility is of later without pressure. Because sometimes when you're told to do something, you automatically rebel. Whereas when you're forced to kind of have a conversation with yourself and say, not necessarily out loud, I'm not trying to get you lot talking to yourself, just got to put that out there. Just kind of having a conversation, writing stuff down, saying, okay, well, these are the things that I want to do. Me and Lena always run vision board parties so people can put, their visions on paper so you can actually see stuff. Because sometimes when you think stuff in your head, when it actually happens, have you ever thought you'll get a hairstyle and then done the hairstyle and thought this really just doesn't suit me, it looks really horrible on me? So if you kind of get to see that somewhere, even if it's in writing or in pictures, sometimes that's a good way to kind of be able to visualize what you like and love, and try out stuff and look for feelings rather than aesthetics.
If you'd met him before he got the surgery, what would you have told him? To prevent that, if you wanted to prevent that, or is it something we should do?
I would have asked him what it is that why it is that he really wants to do this, and what he thinks would be different in his life. Like, how would his life be changed? Would he be happier? Would he be more appealing to the opposite or same sex? Would he fulfill his goals and dreams and his ambitions? And whether or not this would be, something that would, devastate or potentially, make him lose his life.
What should we do? What can you do? It's an individual's perception at the end of the day. I agree totally with people not having to influence other people because you have people of a weaker mind. But unfortunately, with the amount of communication we have today, the amount of ways of expressing ourselves out, that there's nothing you can actually do with that right now. But my personal belief is society has caused this problem over hundreds and thousands of years. Well, I won't say thousands, hundreds and hundreds of years, to either put the person of power in view of beauty, either financially because people want to make financial gains from beauty, or by just, well, there's only those two really, power or those gains. And by that, it's very difficult to say a solution on it other than, like I was saying, allowing individuals to do what they individually want to do, because as far as I'm concerned, it's society that pushes these things on people. People change their color because of society. People change their way they look and what they do due to society, whether it's entertainment, wanting to fit in with a crowd, whether wanting to get into economics, different statuses. It's to find the core reason of why these people are changing. But I'm born in one way, I'll go that way. That's me.
Annabelle?
I didn't mention at the beginning, but I do quite a lot of work on combating female genital mutilation and teaching medical students. And I think that is one form of beauty or norm that has been established in several societies, and is, with the work of several different parties, being broken down. I think it's quite a good example of how people should arm themselves with knowledge to challenge a system that has been designed and built over centuries to oppress you and keep you self-hating. And I think the solution is to arm yourselves with knowledge of other cultures, your own culture, look at the plethora of different beauty archetypes that people have, and dismantle that system.
So what's the problem in that sense? Because if it's been constructed to keep you in a certain way, where is the problem, or who is it coming from? Where is it coming from?
Well, as I mentioned, it's a system that has been built over a long time, and everything that we have reinforces that system, whether it be media, whether it be the medicalization of things, to uphold a certain standard. And the only way that you can change a standard is looking at other standards that exist and trying to dismantle that system. Okay, and it starts with dismantling that system for yourself. And I'm not saying it's easy, because every day I have to dismantle that system for myself. Whereas if I looked around me at all the images that I'm shown and what people say is beautiful and ideal, I'd look in the mirror and be a very self-hating, probably upset person. But you have to dismantle a system that exists to build yourself up again. And you just have to start from the basics. And then you can become a powerhouse to do that for other people. And then we can all dismantle that system together.
I think, yeah, on like a broader scale, in the media and in the modelling industry, I think it would be a start to have like a greater diversity of models and a greater diversity of people on TV, people who are valued as beautiful. If we saw an increased number of images of people that weren't white, for example, that would be quite a big start in terms of like normalising different standards of beauty and different cultural values, perhaps.
We've heard the views of the panel, and now I'd like to challenge the audience to hear what they said in response to what has been spoken about or what you've seen today. The first thing I'll say, to give my opinion, I think the opinions here vary between whether it's the society or the individual who is more responsible. If the society is made up of individuals, I would say primarily the individuals then. If we come to a point where is consent do we never hold people to account for consent? Are people never responsible for their actions? Are we viewing it as if we have no power? Or anyone has no power? Start off, yeah.
I just wanted to start off, I should use the mic, but again, I don't think you guys think I need the mic, so it's okay. I just want to start off and talk about Bartman. Bartman is a woman who came from Africa to Europe, and she was idolized for her beauty, having a massive bottom, like I said myself there. And she was almost seen as she was actually used as a circus freak. And her bones were put in, I think, a museum as well, because of her voluptuous body figure. So the reason why I'm coming back to this is because I feel like in our community, by our community I say the black community, but black people in general, I feel like that message is not really taught. And I feel like when our men disrespect women in a certain way, I feel like they're disrespecting her memory in doing that. So I just wanted to know what the panel felt about that.
So who's responsible, would you say? Yeah, who's responsible for that instance?
Well, I feel like we're responsible because at the end of the day, if we knew about that, if we knew about this story, if we knew about her story, I don't think we'd be disrespecting our women.
Who's we?
I'm not even going to say the black community. I feel like it's every community in a sense that actually go with women and put women in a certain, like, they're only used for their sexual nature instead of actually understanding the past of how people ridiculed this particular woman in that aspect. So sorry, what's the question again? Who's responsible? Who's responsible for that? I feel like we are responsible for knowing our history and making sure that we hold people accountable who victimize women in that sense.
So it's beauty by then, the concept, only really a woman dominated.
I would say actually it's men who have, see now I'm sounding like a positive or like a strong feminist person. I'm not against the feminist movement or whatever. It's not that. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, I feel like we use the tag beauty in order to, I think, put down other people in a sense. Because if you're not in this club, then you're seen as ugly. And I feel like that's the problem in and of itself.
Anyone want to respond?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said about Sarah Bartman. And her clitoris actually was kept in like a glass case or whatever, and that was exhibited like a zoo animal. I do think that there is this trend that's going on about maybe the last 30, 40 years since we've had like popular culture and social media and stuff with popular culture, is that attributes that are black or of people of African descent are dissected, as you were saying, and then any person that is not black, they don't have to be necessarily white all the time, because there are countries, as you were saying, that where the bleaching is really popular, but there's like a low percentage of white people. But all these countries were touched so deeply by colonialism, and the body image issues that these people have is directly, like, one could say that there's a direct correlation between the fact that they were oppressed for hundreds of years, blah, 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 then people that were like of lighter skin or people that lived with the masters or whatever were put on a higher pedestal. The whole, sorry, I'm a bit ill. The whole kind of divide and conquer thing going on. As with regards to this man over here, I don't think he was doing it to be a woman. I think he does have a mental disorder or something, because nobody that you could class as sane, if that's even a thing, would be walking around looking like this. I do think it's quite sad, the whole Kim Kardashian thing, because I remember there was a cover about it being the year of the bum or something, the year of the arse, and what you guys were saying before about women saying, oh, does my bum look big in this? And now it's really popular to have like a kind of exaggerated, curvaceous figure, not even a normal kind of curvy woman, just this super, super skinny in the waist and really big in the butt, which is really weird for me. I don't know. I think that people are influenced directly from society because society is made up of different individuals and stuff. But I think that social media is slightly a more accurate measure of what people think are beautiful. Because if you go on like Instagram, you'll see people, a lot of the Instagram, like popular Instagram females, I'd say from female perspective, they have a certain look. There's a certain look to a lot of them, if you get what I mean.
I do think that varies in communities, though, because I think Lena and I spoke about it when we come to see you guys. There are communities of people who have anorexia, and they idolize the person who can has the best technique at putting their fingers down their throat. And it's within each community, these communities, it probably be who can get the most gains or who can look the hugest. And what happens is we are grouped. So even on social media, say Instagram, they show you, say you're on your explore page, or the people that have, you will come across are generally people that you would always come across. So within your grouping, or the people whose pictures you've liked or who have you liked yours, so you don't actually get to see the world of people that are hugely popular for other attributes, if that makes sense. So in some, like there's a rich and skinny kind of community where, if you're a certain class, generally white females, really skinny females, they all kind of populate that area. They have no interest in the Kim Kardashian bottom at all. And then and I'm saying a Kim Kardashian bottom in inverted commas, because I definitely think it's a really valid point that you're saying. When J-Lo or Kim Kardashian had a big bottom, it was then celebrated like it wasn't something that was beautiful before, but now it's a brand new thing and no one's ever had a big bottom before, ever in history. So I do think that it is about kind of culture vultures and kind of communities embracing stuff that they think they are supposed to love, and this is the idea of what I think should be beautiful.
Where it concerns bleaching and things and all this sort of stuff that we're talking about here, one thing we don't do is look at history and how we got to this point. And when you study history, you'll find that black or African, or whatever you want to call it, view was the dominating color and ruling power of the world for thousands of years. Western rule has only been for the last 1,500 years. Yeah, it's a very small time in history. It's very, very minute time in history. This also then brings us to religion. The first religions would have been around nature. When you have a religion around nature, it's deemed then very close with the sun. When you deal with the sun, then you're dealing with people who are closer to the sun because their skin is related to the sun in that aspect. When you have people then who burn in front of the sun in a religious aspect, it comes to the story of something was done bad in their previous life for them to come back with no color, no pigmentation, no melanin. This was the first, what we could call racisms, yeah? When Western culture then took over, yeah, with the rise of the gun and different things like that, which allowed the power base to come over, to then take dominant and control of the world, you would then want yourself to be that dominant color. That's when religion comes in, and people then putting themselves in a position, or religions coming up where they become closer to God. People then who are very religious, who don't feel close to God then, because their skin color doesn't represent the image of God, then become mentally perplexed and will do different things to themselves, yeah? That's an issue that we haven't discussed. We've discussed economics, we've discussed everything else, but then we haven't got into the facts of religions. And religions have a very, very strong play in beauty and how people deem themselves and how they construct their view of the world. And by this is where you'll find a lot of people not knowing history, because you'll talk to a lot of people and you'll talk to a lot of white people, they don't know their history beyond the year 2000. You talk to a lot of black people, they don't know their history beyond slavery, yeah? Without knowing your origins and where the seeds started and how things started, where religion started, how society started, how tribes were formed and things like that, you would then lose the aspect of how certain beauty things came into play. Because a lot of things came into play through tribalism. Tattoos, tribal marks, different hairstyles, these were ways to notice each other. Because we have this thing called race today, and we use these words racism and race, yeah, we then make bigger groups of people, when really all we have are tribes. We're one human race, but we identify each other by tribes. You can identify people by tribes of color or tribes of markings. I could be in a tribe of all white people because our ideologies are all the same, but then we would have certain tribal marks that will make us together, yeah? But by us now having this thing of race and now dividing everybody into bigger sets of communities, I now don't look as an individual as you are from that tribe and I don't deal with this tribe. I look at you as I don't deal with the whole race. So now you have people wanting to become like a race of people, not a tribe of people. So the individual we saw up there may have people that they want to be like, but not the whole race. Or it could be now that they want to be like the whole race because we've gone so far into society now and lost the essence of where things started and how things came about. But now we don't know how to get back to where we want to get back to in terms of beauty and understanding why these things came into play. And they didn't come into play for beauty. They came into play for identity. But today we have things like women wearing high heels. That's beauty. Because high heels, you don't really need to wear it. Men like it. I would still condone it. But you don't have to wear it. It's only because you wore it, I know it. If you never wore it, I would have never known it.
Anybody else? Hold on, we'll come back. Anybody else want to say something?
Thank you. Two points, but I think sort of coming on directly from this idea of having a good historical understanding, my first point, I suppose, is to say that, and I think it's important to stress this actually, Bartman, didn't come to Europe, she was taken to Europe, she was sold to Europe. And I think in a space like SOAS, and particularly in the absence of many white people, it's important to sort of emphasize this point that she didn't, come of her own volition. And I think on that same note, in a place like SOAS and with so few, white people here, or in fact, even if the room was full of white people, the gentleman in the middle there, the moderator, asking and kind of pressing, who's responsible, who did this. I think, we can safely say that white people did this, and predominantly white, male, heteropatriarchy did this. My primary comment is related to the video that you played earlier. and it's not really a question, it's a comment back to the panel. But it's interesting that I sense that the Cameroonian lady was vilified in some way. The very first thing that Amanda Holden said to this woman before she'd even said anything herself was, "You look beautiful." So she's then receiving some sort of affirmation from a white woman, and she herself is sat next to a gentleman who's made a career out of ridiculing and shaming women into making themselves feel like they don't look beautiful because they don't wear a certain type of clothing and whatnot. So who's to blame here? I don't think it's really the Cameroonian woman who's chosen to do this and that with the colour of her skin. I think perhaps we should look back at the people that are posing the questions.
So if we take, say, your point further, would you say beauty is primarily more of like a racial conflict, or maybe in terms of aesthetics, really? Is it still a tool of domination, or if you've applied that?
I think the way that the mainstream media tries to portray beauty is it benefits white people. I mean, you look at the angst amongst white people, white men, when there was this suggestion that Idris Elba should play the next James Bond. I mean, why were people so frustrated about that? It's because white men can't see themselves in Idris Elba, and they all want to pretend that they're James Bond. Why can the mainstream media, why can the New York Times get away with comparing Serena Williams to a horse when they argue about who should be the sports person of the year? I mean, it's a system that benefits white people and is racist at its very core,
Yeah, no, I really agree with everything you said. Basically, the first thing I want to pick up on is the idea of the human zoos. I guess had a large part to play in it. The colonial human zoos, and it was women and men, all from the colonies, who were displayed to white people in Europe and America, and white people would come and basically laugh at the different body types that they saw because they weren't white body types. Basically, they weren't Caucasian body types. They were unusual within the context of whiteness, and I think that in some ways continues today. Maybe human zoos aren't in the same way, but in the media things are portrayed like that. For example, as you said, Serena Williams being compared to a horse, and the bodies of people who aren't white in the media being scrutinized beyond belief, and always scrutinized relative to white beauty norms. And I think, as you said, beauty norms within our society, because we do live in a very Western-dominated society in the post-colonial world, are white and white-dominated in the extreme.
What I'd like to pick up on in referencing both of you, actually, and why is it then, in my opinion, that it's been taken to the point where parts where you see maybe a white male or white female or white individuals, why is it the biggest still skin bleaching epidemic? Well, I wouldn't even call it epidemic, depending on which side of the fence you are, is at most in countries where there is very little.
Yeah, but the reason for that, for example, India was brought up earlier. It's L'Oreal that is selling skin bleaching products in India. It's a Western company that is selling an image of white beauty, and because of the fact that these countries have been colonized, there's been a internalization of racism, whereby proximity to whiteness is seen as beneficial, proximity to whiteness is seen as beautiful, proximity to whiteness is seen as being a way for you to gain success in some way or another. And because of the fact that Western cultural norms are so dominant within our world, Hollywood, things like that, Western superstars go all over the world to parade around, and that is seen as beautiful, that is seen as not even just beautiful, part of a lifestyle that's sold, like part of a sexy sort of capitalist lifestyle. And that is seen as something to aspire to in countries where people perhaps don't have as much wealth.
Just kind of building on that and the initial comment about the individual versus society. I think you were quite right in terms of your comment that when we looked at the video, no, the Cameroonian lady isn't solely to blame. We have to acknowledge that there's a wider system that has kind of enabled her to be this way. I think it's really important I think it was Susan Bordeaux, this anthropologist, that initially said, when you think about agency, feminism, she was talking about feminism, but it expands to all things. It allows people to be alleviated and discrimination and oppressive regimes to be minimized into mere hurdles that we just need to overcome. Okay, and it alleviates a wider system, a white supremacist, a system of white supremacy of blame, and you can then just say it's the individual making that decision. So yeah, just.
Yeah, and I think clearly as well the woman in the video, whilst I don't agree with the skin whitening, I think she is a victim of like a white supremacist structure that's been imprinted on her, and the fact that, like, as you pointed out, the presenter validated her by telling her she looked beautiful only probably reinforced the idea of beauty that she had as being light and white.
All right, we can take 2 more comments and from the audience and from the panel, and then we have to wrap up.
I just quickly wanted to touch on the fact that, you know, we weren't paying attention to the fact that she said she was a model. And sometimes people don't fit into what society wants a model to look like, or the person that's running the campaign. And for me, it seems like she's just trying to mold herself into whatever she thinks will be most fitting. Like I said before, she'd already said that she had, you know, when Alec Weck was leading the way, she thought, okay, well, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to be the next Alec Weck. I'm going to get darker. I'm going to tan myself and try and get as dark as I can. That failing, she went the opposite route. And I just think that it's just about, okay, sometimes not everybody is going to be selected for particular jobs, and that is based on the current standing of what beauty is. And whether or not you change yourself to be that is not necessarily going to get her the job. And I think that's where the issues were probably coming in. The modelling industry is fierce. People say no to people in very ruthless manners. Some people, you know, will sit you down and say, okay, well, no, you're not right for us at this current time. Other people, when on set, will receive really, really, really defaming comments about what you look like. You know, you should really lose weight, or, you know, you're just too dark, or if you were a bit lighter, then we would probably have, you know, chosen you for this. And we face this every day, you know, in submitting models for jobs. And luckily, as an agency, we're a filter, so our models don't have to hear this and any of the negative comments. And they're also been able to get feedback from us as to maybe how they could, you know, speak to people in a way that might be a little bit more fitting. But if you were told, you know, you're I don't know, your hair's crap or your nose is too big, repeatedly, then sometimes it does have that consuming effect on someone. And I feel like that might have been somewhat what has happened to her.
I think the standard of view is completely reinforced by the media, and the most dominant culture all over the world is Western culture. So when you were talking about skin bleaching, like why people, where there's a small percentage of like white people bleaching their skin, I think it's because Western media, Western culture is still the dominant one around the world, and people still look up to that.
Is there just no say of the people of those countries? Like for instance, does this allow, personally, for me, for anyone who does it to say, okay, here's my trump card, this is why I do it, boom. You know, it's not me, it's them. It's them, I have no control over myself. Is that?
But you have to look at that within a wider context. It's not just skin bleaching. We didn't really point this out before, but some of your images did. There's double eyelid fold surgery happening in China. Iran has the highest proportion of nose jobs. Lots of those people have never even come into contact with somebody that looks like the Eurocentric ideal of beauty, but they're making noses that look as small and as tiny as Jennifer Aniston. It's prevalent within the Jewish community as well. You're not looking at it just, it's happening the world over in different forms, and everybody's trying to reach a very similar aesthetic. So yeah, it really it reinforces your point. It is this colonial Western archetype of beauty that has been packaged and sold, and through globalization is being sold more and more to even more far distant, more difficult to reach corners of
of the globe.
One thing that I add to it as well is, area we didn't talk about is anti-aging. Anti-aging right now has become another big trend. People are putting huge sums of money into cosmetic surgery and creams. I did a market research in Paris the other day for cosmetics, for a cream. We have an actual cream coming out, so I was in there discussing anti-aging cream. And the woman explained to me you have to use 3 creams, one after the other, and they talked to about £65 or something like that to use these 3 creams. And she said she uses these creams. I said, oh, that's lucky. I said, so how old are you? She says she's 29. But to me, she looks about 35, yeah? Plus, I said, okay, so how old do you think I am? She says, 25, 27. I said, no, 42. Maybe you should use Vaseline, because that's what I use, yeah? Now,
Woo! Someone was drinking tea.
but the point is, it is all economics as well. This huge, as much as we talk about Western society is powered by economics. And this whole thing is an economic game. Yeah, if I make it, I sell it, you buy it. And if I make it, you will have to buy it. And we're carbon-based people. Half these creams you buy, half the chemicals you use are causing distress in your body. Because they're not carbon-based, they're chemicals. And if you're adding chemicals on your body or in your body, it's going to cause you problems. Yeah? And they're selling the cheapest, most expensive. My travels on creams, I located a cream the other day, 30 mils, it's like this, £780 this cream. Yeah? It's laced with platinum. And you have another one laced with 24 karat gold. Everything else is chemical. There is no natural product in the cream, but people pay this because it's a commercial industry.
And that's our last comment. Thanks, Charmaine Hayden from Faithful Music, Ricky Gardner from Revo Seekers, Annabelle, your junior doctor and FGM specialist. No, I'm joking. FGM's
Say activist.
activist. And Amit on my far left from Consented UK. And thanks to all of you.
Active Media Group, exposing your genius.